everyone. I want to welcome you to an interview that I'm going to be having with my good friend, Natasha Bansgopaul. Hi.
Hey.
We were chatting, and then I thought we need to start the recording on this because we always have such good interaction, and the conversations are just insanely amazing. I was just giving my friend hell because she didn't tell anybody about this award that she got, and I posted congratulations, and all her friends were like, "Say what?" And you were like, "I ain't got no time to post things. I'm busy changing the world," and that's what I want to focus on today. She's changing the world, and we're gonna find out how did she get to be this way? Because whenever I can get inspiration from people, I really like to hone in on what is it they're doing and things that I can implement. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way. So we're gonna delve into this. So welcome, Natasha. How are
Thank
you?
you. I'm well. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. We were just saying that we're totally over COVID, but we got to hang in there for a little bit
Yep.
longer. But
We've made it this far, so we might as well keep trekking and being safe. So everybody
that's
stay
right.
safe out there.
Please stay safe. So tell me about your journey. So tell us a little bit about yourself for people who don't know you, and where did you grow up and how did you, we'll get to that, but let's talk about you.
Yes, absolutely. So I like to always start the story with I grew up in money earning Mount Vernon. So I'm from New York. I grew up in Westchester County in Mount Vernon, New York, which is a city right outside the Bronx, but it is in Westchester. And I lived there and grew up there most of my life until moving to Upper Westchester a bit later. But I am a first generation Caribbean American. My parents are from St. Lucia and Guyana. Bop, bop. I rep the West Indies quite hard all the time. And it's a passion of mine to, help develop folks, especially folks that are interested in tech and FinTech, specifically coming from a Caribbean background. So reach out. Love to help how I can. And essentially, really, I grew up in Mount Vernon. My family's fairly large. I have 4 siblings. And I have a enormous amount of aunts and uncles on both sides because traditionally Caribbean families are fairly large, for those that don't know, and my family is no exception. So that is both wonderful and overwhelming. But like I said, the great thing is you always have a place to stay wherever you travel around
Wherever
the
you
globe.
go, right?
Wherever you go, you have a place to stay and you know that your belly will be full. So really, yeah, I grew up in Mount Vernon. I went to public school in Mount Vernon all the way up until high school. And then I went to private school at a school called the Masters School in Dobbs Ferry, New York.
Okay.
And I credit Masters for being a really pivotal time in my life because like I said, I was in public school in Mount Vernon, which is, a majority of Black people live in Mount Vernon. It's kind of more majority Black. Black wasn't the minority as I was growing up, if you will, is probably a better way to put it. And when I went to Masters, it was like my world kind of shifted. I kind of had what I'd like to say a bit of culture shock, in the sense that it was very different environment. So I was a boarding student at a private school in Dobbs Ferry, New York. I was one of, I believe there were 5 of us in our class that were people of color. And our class sizes were small. So I think we had about 80 students in our year. So it was a very different environment where, because it was boarding school, we also had a large degree of international students, particularly from South Korea and China. So what I'd like to say is that Masters really gave me what I'd like to say is a real world perspective on how the world kind of functions, in a sense of understanding cultural nuances and having a better picture of what is the kaleidoscope, if you will, of the world and what reality is. I think being in the bubble that it was Mount Vernon, it was a bit hard to see what that kind of what interactions were like, or learning and understanding different cultural nuances. But Masters gave me that opportunity at a young age to kind of dive in and figure that out. So that was a wonderful experience. And that kind of just led me on my trajectory to go to undergraduate. I went to Binghamton University, SUNY Binghamton, for undergrad. And then I went for grad school, I pursued my MBA, and I went to Penn State, Smeal College of Business, where I received a full scholarship to attend. So that's kind of like a little bit of my background through school. And since then, I have worked in both, corporate America America on the CPG world and Fortune 100 companies. And I, for the last 10 years or so, have been actively an entrepreneur in FinTech, working in the worlds of alternative investments, blockchain, and digital assets.
So how did you become an entrepreneur? What got you there?
Yeah, there's lots of steps. So I think part of it was that I got exposed to entrepreneurship in college to the degree of trying to understand like what that world even means. And I remember a professor always saying that you can't teach people to be entrepreneurs, but you can learn what being an entrepreneur means to a degree. So in that, and I take that to say that there is a drive and motivation that is integral to being an entrepreneur. And you either have it or you don't, is my experience. So as I became exposed to that world, I really started to try to understand, like, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? What does it mean to have an entrepreneurial mindset? What does that look like? And is that something that I'd be open to? So as I was doing a lot of these classes in entrepreneurship, startups, and even like, organizational behavior, that was another class. It kind of gave you, it gave me kind of the battery in my back, or the thought in the back of my mind that said, like, this is something that you're going to want to do. So pay attention. And that, having the freedom to create and build and provide real solutions via a business is something that's always been important to me. And more so, what was important to me is being able to see my direct work and effort affect something. And I think in corporate, you tend not to necessarily be able to see that because you're doing like one prong of, a very complex project, or you own one piece of something. But in entrepreneurship, you are, especially if you are the entrepreneur, you own all of that. So
Yes,
you do get to see fairly quickly, what your impact is. And at the same token, you get very clear on accountability, because if a ball is dropped or something goes awry, like it's your fault that it happened. So there's a degree of that as well that you have to be ready for. So I think I kind of had it in the back of my mind. And as I was working through my corporate experience, I started to think a bit more about like what it means and when would be the right time to kind of go off on my own. And I eventually did. After I had about 7.5 years or so in corporate America, I jumped ship to do entrepreneurship full time.
And tell us about the companies that you have, because you have quite a few interesting things going on.
Yes. So in terms of companies that I'm actually the founder of, we work within FinTech, and what we are building is essentially the next generation FinTech conglomerate, if you will, is probably a great way to say it. So we started with Dark Matter in 2014, and Dark Matter is a global award-winning platform for alternative investments. And essentially what that means is we really just built the engine to connect investors and fund managers in a compliant, secure, and efficient way online. So traditionally, the business was done very pen and paper. Fax machines are still being used. We built the engine that kind of got rid of fax machines, said, hey, like there are all these new tech tools you could use to move money, to sign documents, DocuSign, to do all sorts of things. Why aren't we using them, right? And a lot of it was about, we need to kind of put out there that they're like, these tools are efficient and available, and it's about kind of your appetite to start adopting to it or adapting to those technologies. So that's where we started with Dark Matter. And essentially what we realized with Dark Matter is that we were placing bets on where we saw the industry going. So we saw the industry moving to a very much online digital world. And now as we continue to think about like, what's that next generation of financial technology? We started with online platform. The next was blockchain, in terms of really next generation technologies that can be used as a back end engine to support a lot of core functions that are already happening in business. Will help it happen in a more efficient manner. And that's where we built Constellation. So Constellation is the blockchain development arm of Dark Matter. And we work with financial services firms to help them figure out if they need blockchain teams, what those blockchain teams would do, and how to essentially approach any kind of tech build specifically in blockchain, in addition to building our own network to support Dark Matter. So that's Constellation. And then our next latest venture is VegaX, and VegaX itself is taking that thesis another step in the terms of where do we see investment services in another 5 to 10 years, and we're looking at the world of digital assets and what does that mean. And essentially Vega X is creating a one-stop shop for traditional investors to access to access traditional like strategies based in digital assets. So what does that mean? That means ETFs based in Bitcoin, volatility indexes, really composed of the underlying assets, all being digital assets. So how do we create familiar products for traditional investors so that they can start coming along this journey of digital investing in digital assets? So at the time where digital assets is kind of a universal theme, they aren't necessarily shocked or left out in the cold. And then of course, on top of all of that, enhancing your returns and providing you a better return profile than just passively holding the coin or the asset. So that's what VegaX is. So we really focus on all our companies on where do we see next generation FinTech solutions taking place on a global scale, and how can we start to be a part of the foundation building those solutions at its very infancy. Because we've learned that, you can be a part of things from the infancy and still make a lot of impact as things grow and evolve. It's a bit harder to come in towards the tail end and make some change and make a bit of a buzz. So that's where we are in terms of a bit more forward thinking in how we're building tech and what we're building.
Wow. And what do you want people, that's so impressive. Like, how did you get the idea? Those ideas?
A lot of my ideas really come from how do we make things easier for investors, and how do we make things easier to understand and reduce the barriers to entry. So that's where a lot of my thoughts come from. My partner, also to his credit, he's the one who thinks a lot about, where can we place calculated bets on building the tech? And we had blockchain on the roadmap. We started building blockchain in 2018, I believe, 2017, 2018-ish.
Okay.
We had it on the roadmap then for 2020. So we weren't thinking of blockchain in any recent time, but because of the market meets opportunity and the interest, we expedited that roadmap, right? So he is very kind of, I'd like to say that he is clairvoyant in the sense that he really does think about where some of these trends are going. And we start to build an experiment to see if, people are interested, and then we double down on that.
Impressive. And does he do a lot of reading? Do you do a lot of reading to find, what's cool, what's going to work, what's going to be the next greatest thing?
Yes. So it's a mix of kind of research. And honestly, it's also a mix of like talking to clients and talking to our former clients, because especially since we're building this ecosystem, within FinTech and within digital assets, it's really about understanding what investors need to feel comfortable and what they need to, actually move the money, right? So whether that be they need education, or they need, they need assistance, like hand-holding assistance. So they want someone on the call, on a phone to like help them move through steps of buying Bitcoin and, transferring it. Like there's a lot of confusion and I think complexity that comes along with operating in systems like this. So we do a lot of work to make sure we're either providing those educational materials and leading with thought leadership, or we offer the services that allow a bit more hands-on approach to get people more comfortable, because we're firm believers that, if you could educate folks and folks feel comfortable, particularly in financial services and investment services, they'll be that much more likely to pull the trigger and invest in things and interact on their own. So that's kind of a hypothesis that we use as we kind of think about what's next and what we're building.
Wow. So here's my question for you. You had a corporate and now you have entrepreneurship experience. Do you find people treat you differently simply compared to your partner because you're a woman, or because you're Black? And can you give us some examples and tell us what you do to overcome that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I always love to tell this story when we walk into pitch meetings, and there have been times where we walked into pitch meetings and they assume I'm his assistant, which says to me, one, you didn't do your research, because I don't look like an assistant. Darn it. No, but more so it's just there's a perception there, right? That a female has come along with this male founder and she's there to take notes. So I've had those experiences, and the way that I've attacked those experiences is essentially just by hitting the nail on the head. I make it clear that I'm going to be leading the pitch, and then I start pitching. And I think that between my partner and I, he's very good at making sure that my voice is heard and that I'm not stifled in situations like that. and making sure that, you know, he gives me the opportunity to say what I need to say and,
Yeah.
you know, pitch what we need to pitch on the business. So that happens often, but especially because we like to say we're one of the most diverse teams in FinTech. My partner is Korean American, I'm Caribbean American, our CTO is Ukrainian.
Oh, you
And
got it. All of it.
yeah, so we kind of like, we've preached that for a long time. And I think the reality is that now, especially in this timing, there's a lot of spotlight being placed on, you know, the need to find and identify these kind of founders and opportunities. And I'm very interested to see how that progresses as people put their money where their mouth is, if you will.
You know,
But we'll be raising capital soon on Vega X, so I'm very interested to see who's gonna step up and who's gonna, you know, entertain these meetings and, you know, listen to what we're building and the growth that we've been able to and the milestones we've been able to reach thus far, and, you know, be really open to diversifying their portfolio in a manner as well.
okay, so I'm going to touch on the, you know, the fact that you won this amazing award a few months ago. Would you tell people what it was that you won? Because I have some questions about that.
Yes, exactly. So I was selected as a 2021 White House Presidential Innovation Fellow, which
Amazing.
is a wonderful program and an amazing achievement. I was very honored to be selected. I did not think I was going to be selected, but I think that is another kind of advice or tip in terms of like, throw your hat in the ring. Like, you never know like what people are looking
Mhm.
for and if your experience is what folks need. But I was selected with one of I think there's a total of 34 of us this year in this year's cohort. And essentially it's a cohort of leading technologists from America that have been tapped to do a 1-year assignment or project detailed to a specific agency within the government to really use your tech skills to help solve complex problems that can really help citizens and help the population. So I was selected to work specifically with NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, working with their ITL, so the Information Technology Lab, and I'm working specifically on AI research. So it's a very important, I think, element where NIST is essentially what we'd like to call like the hub of standards, where a lot of procedures, frameworks, and standardization of technology frameworks come specifically from this agency within the government. So it's an important place to be because you really understand and learn about how academics, researchers, and engineers are tackling some really complex problems, especially as it pertains to AI. So as we see this advent of AI kind of being integrated throughout everything, it's this agency's job to make sure that they put out recommendations and standards as to how people are supposed to build in non-biased ways and transparent manners and data sets, etc. So it's a very important function that is going to continue to show its value throughout the years as technology like AI continues to be adapted and more socialized.
Wow, that's really impressive. So my question for you is, like, what drives you? What keeps you going?
Great question. I think that I have a unparalleled hunger for success. I think is
And
probably
nothing
a
wrong
little
with
bit way
that.
to
That's
say.
impressive.
So
Yeah.
I'm very driven to achieve, and I think part of that is probably my Caribbean upbringing, where it's kind of a Caribbean joke. You work 8 jobs. Everybody has like multiple jobs. Like
Yeah.
nobody just has one job. It's just
Right.
a thing. But I think it's also because I saw my parents work really hard and do whatever they had to give us the life that they gave us here, and we've been able. Luckily, we've been able to take advantage of a lot of the opportunities that America has given us. And the opportunity to be a Presidential Innovation Fellow was another kind of opportunity for me to figure out how I can give back, particularly to a country that I feel like has given me so much and given my family so much, and being able to have that perspective. So that's something that I think really drives me. And, I want to spread awareness, particularly for people of color, specifically for women of color, and even more specifically for women of color in FinTech, that there are opportunities out here and that there's a path forward. And I'm a firm believer that exposure is half the battle. If you can see it, you can be it. And I didn't have many people that I could see and kind of role model to in roles like this as I was growing up. So my
Yeah.
hope is that I can kind of create that path so that more people of color, more women in tech, more women in FinTech, explore these opportunities and take up these careers if it's something of interest.
So absolutely, absolutely amazing. What were your parents' reaction when you told them that you got this award?
My dad was beyond thrilled. He actually joined. There was one day where they had the swearing in ceremony once you kind of join, and he specially requested invite link so he could attend. And then I had to tell him he's not allowed to do it through WhatsApp because then all of my family would join the call.
Right?
So his reaction
You
was
know that's what
thrilled
he was
and
gonna
beyond.
do.
You know that was about to happen. You already
You
know.
know.
You know how the
You know.
WhatsApp Carib
You
gang
know.
gets down. It's a full chain mail all throughout. Word spreads like
Right?
wildfire.
Oh
So I
my
had to nip
gosh.
that in the bud, but he was beyond thrilled. Yeah, I think it's kind of another kind of checkbox there of, he had to go through so much to try to get here, right? And to, bring us
Yeah.
all here and bring the family over, which is kind of
Yeah.
a standard Caribbean struggle that I think a lot of folks identify with. So to be able to see that, his children are progressing like this and getting opportunities like that, I think it makes him extremely proud. And he actually told me he's proud of me, which you also know that doesn't come easy in
Right?
Caribbean households.
Does not
So that
come easy, my
that
friend.
means I'm doing something right. So
I know. I remember when I was speaking at the UN and I said to my dad, I'm just speaking at the UN. He's like, the United Nations? I'm like, yes.
define
Like,
the UN.
Right? I'm like, would you like to come? He's like, to the United Nations? I'm like, yes.
Yes. And then I saw him walk in with the caravan of other family, and I was like, yep, that's her family.
You saw that was all of them. And I was like, guys, it's all about blockchain. You guys are going to be bored. Feel free to leave. But they were like, nope, we're staying all
we're
day.
Gonna be there. Yep, that's exactly what they did, because I
That's
definitely
exactly
saw them all day.
Saw them, and they just sat there, right? And they were like, we don't. My dad understood, but my aunts were like, we don't get it, but we're
happy
here.
to be there. Thrilled to be there. Yep, absolutely.
Oh, it's so funny. I love that you're like, yep, you saw them.
Yep, I definitely saw them, because I was like, that's auntie. I think that's dad. Yep, this is the caravan.
This is the caravan. I love it. So here's my question for you. What other goals would you like to achieve? Because from my perspective, you are identifying something and you're like, okay, and right? So like my question for you, what other goals do you want to achieve? And is it like you see it, you do it, you achieve it, and you move on, or do you plan?
That's a good question. I think it's a mix of both. So to a degree, I planned a lot, probably all the way through launching Dark Matter. So kind of like the first company. After that, it's been an exercise in like patience and the ability to live in ambiguity. So that's like something they tell you in MBA school, and probably anybody who's watching this that went to grad school with me or went to MBA has heard this story. Like, can you thrive in ambiguity? Do you know how to thrive in ambiguity? And being an entrepreneur, particularly in FinTech, I think that is a degree of what you have to do, because a lot of times you're addressing or providing solutions with technology that has never been created before, right? So part of it is you have to think about and conceptualize, like, what's the feasibility and what's the need and potential opportunity? And is it a long-term opportunity? Or is it a short-term opportunity? And then you kind of hedge your bets in that manner and build accordingly. But I think a lot of building in FinTech is about kind of, ebb and flow, figuring out what's happening, doubling down on that hypothesis, and then, experimenting to see if there's traction and interest there before you kind of like double down on building a whole kind of FinTech system there. So in terms of like my goals, the next goals that I have is to continue to build Vega X Constellation and Dark Matter, not launch any other companies under this lovely conglomerate, and to really build each business unit to the degree that I really feel like they can grow. I think that they all can grow and have significant wins behind them thus far, but because of regulations in, crypto and blockchain, or lack thereof, and, the world still progressing at the speed of light as it pertains to kind of like FinTech technology development. It's one of those things things where like, you know, you kind of have to take it a quarter at a time in terms of like the growth in the market, et cetera. But I think that there's a lot of opportunity to grow those businesses. And I very much look forward to us being able to grow them significantly and, you know, put dark matter on the map and potentially IPO one day.
Oh, there you go. Now we're talking. Because I know you have a roadmap. It's like, will she share it with us? But I know you have it. So here's my question. Like, what advice would you give to people? Oh dear, let's just stop that right there. What advice would you give to people who are interested in, you know, attaining some, if not the goal, all the goals that you have, or if they're looking to get started on their journey? What advice would you give?
I think my one of the biggest pieces of advice that I give are two things, actually. One is build your networks, identify the groups, the chats, the webinars, the social groups, the clubhouse rooms, if you will. Identify those networks that you really can learn from and that have people that you admire, because you kind of have to, in my perspective, you have to envision it to a degree. And some of that looks like, you know, seeing what you admire about people who have progressed in their careers or achieved to some degree, and figure out what elements of that you want to kind of like take in on your own. And like I said, I'm a big firm believer, if you see it, you can be it. And I think half the battle is getting exposure to these networks, which is significantly easier than it was when I started in the world of entrepreneurship years ago. Like the fact that there are organizations for women in tech, women in FinTech, Black women in blockchain, women of color in blockchain, you know, all of these elements. That's just something that didn't exist years ago. So people like you, people like Clev, they're like, you guys are like building these ecosystems that really are connecting people in a way that we haven't been able to connect before. So that is one specific thing that I say. And then the other thing I say is write things down. Like just write things down. We were talking about this before, like, you know, these lists and these Post-its that you have everywhere. Like I wouldn't even show you my workstation. Yeah, it's like I have like 50,000 different things like at any point in time. And it's important because I think that there's especially as being an entrepreneur, you're wearing many hats. You're going to have to do a lot of things. The more that you can get it out of your head and somewhere else, hopefully on reference and paper or something like that, it just gives me peace of mind. And then it allows me to be a bit more actionable and keep focused on like what those key things are and prioritize. So that's kind of the way that I look about it. Get it out of your head so you could stop thinking about it, and then plan time to think about it at a later time.
Okay, I love that. That's absolutely amazing. Okay, that's all right. I love this. Yeah. A lot of it's some of the stuff I do, and then some things I'm going to implement more. I used to, before we talked, I used to write things down like on my computer, and then I started writing things down. I hadn't used a pen or pencil continuously in like months, if not years. And I was like, it is true. You do retain things better. And it really does help. So yeah, that is fantastic. And so we're almost at the end. Do you have any last words about yourself that you want people to know, or anything like that?
About me.
I've stumped her.
Nothing that I want people to know about me. I think it's just important that folks, you know, and I guess it's an element of myself or my character is like, especially if you're in tech and in FinTech and, you know, in general, I would assume, but definitely in tech, the world is changing so fast and so quickly, and quicker than it ever has before, that there is definitely this need for folks to be passionate about learning and continuous learning. So I think that there's a new age that we're moving into where, one, you know, there's information overload as a whole, but now it's about like, you know, how do you digest, consume that information, and then utilize it, right? And, you know, in your day-to-day. So I think that there's an important element here of wanting to continue to learn and not being stagnant in, you know, subject matters, tech, etc. Because the more that you're able to kind of diversify in that manner, the easier it's going to be for you to think of ideas, for you to build for different user groups, for you to, you know, create solutions and stay on top of, you know, what's happening in the market and what's happening on tech trend wise.
Yeah. And who would have thought, meeting you 4 years ago in Puerto Rico, and then from Puerto Rico, we did the UN, we're doing this, and next week we're the Senate and the Congress. Like,
there you go.
What?
It's crazy. It's crazy how things happen full circle. And that's why I say, like, network and meet people, because like, Like Emma said, I met her years ago in Puerto Rico. We
Puerto Rico at
bonded
this
over
conference,
just
yeah.
at a conference randomly. Like I literally think I telegrammed her. We like ran into each other, and then we just realized, you know, we want to stay connected. We're working on the same stuff. Let's figure out how to support. And I think that's kind of all you can ask for in like the in the powwow universe. And then you never know, all these things come full circle.
Yeah, and I would say that, I don't know about you, but COVID has really kind of narrowed the people that I interact with, because now you interact with people that, you know, are similar to you or have same goals and dreams as you, or are doing things that you find, you know, remarkable, and, you know, you just want to support. And that's what I think about you. I find like what you're doing absolutely remarkable, and I am absolutely proud of everything you've accomplished.
Thank you so much.
I don't know if I'm just going to share this with you. I see a future where, you know, you're back in the White House, you're running a department. Maybe, I'm not saying now, maybe 10, 15 years from now, I see you doing something. That's my goal.
Crystal ball.
That's my goal.
You know,
I don't think you'd be happy being president, but I think that just running something, making stuff happen, making your mark, that's what I see.
I won't say no to that. I will agree with you that it's not president, but I will not say, I won't take it out the cards. I'll say that.
Yeah, you've got this in your future. I can totally see it. Your future is so bright, like you should be wearing shades all the time. It's kind of cheesy, but it's true.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you. And I feel the same about you. And I think that, you know, these series, and the more that we're able to kind of like get together, talk about these things, share advice and tips, I think it's so important to build up, you know, next class of entrepreneurs, to give people perspective, and, you know, just to offer an outlet for folks to, you know, connect more directly, whether it be through business or personal passions.
And it's funny you say that, because I will announce it here. I'm going to start something once a month where I have Zoom meetings, and we invite people to come on. And if they have questions, you know, we'll have like a panel of people. And if they have questions, you know, we're there to answer them. And it can just be random, because I did one yesterday and I never realized how much people need assistance. And so I'm like, if we can just help them on different forums, you know, we're going to try and make them happier, make the world a better place, and just, you know, sort of give back. And because, you know, we're doing okay, so if you can give back to people, that'd be great.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's all about sharing. It's all about sharing.
Okay, good, because stand by for your invitation.
I was just about to say, that sounds like I'm going to get an email soon. Done. You got it.
There you go. Anyway, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it, Natasha. And you keep doing what you do. Thank you. We'll be watching your progress with bated breath, and keep killing it.
Thank you. Chat soon.